Presentation of D4K on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Dinosaurs once dominated the earth, but now we learn about dinosaurs by studying their bones, or here at this dig, we study their fossilized eggs. You have a question about dinosaurs? We've got answers. Stay tuned. D4K is next. Hi, I'm Joan Cartan-Hansen. Welcome to D4K, the place for science. And welcome to a real dinosaur dig. But before we go to your questions, let's learn a bit more about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs dominated the landscape for more than 160 million years, long before humans were around. The first dinosaurs lived about 230 million years ago in what's known as the Triassic period. Others came and went over the centuries, finally dying out about 65 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period. What we know about dinosaurs, we've learned from their bones and other fossils. Scientists called paleontologists find, prepare, and carefully study each new specimen. And what have they found out? Dinosaurs started as small meat-eating animals. They evolved into thousands of different types, including some of the largest animals to ever walk the earth. Dinosaurs were meat eaters and plant eaters. Some hunted their prey, others were scavengers. One way scientists can tell what kind of food a dinosaur ate is by looking at their teeth. The Tyrannosaurus, or T-Rex, had huge teeth, but it was probably a scavenger rather than a hunter. Dinosaurs were not warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Rather, scientists think they were dinosaur-blooded, a condition sort of like being warm-blooded, but not exactly. They laid eggs like birds and were good mothers, watching over their nests. Some dinosaurs ran very fast, and there were avian dinosaurs that flew. So why did dinosaurs disappear? One theory is that an asteroid hit the Earth in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The resulting explosion destroyed forests throughout most of North America and much of South America. It would have caused an earthquake, and evidence of a giant tsunami have been found as far away as Spain and Brazil. Those dinosaurs that survived the impact may well have died because their food supply was destroyed. But not every dinosaur was wiped out. Scientists think that one subgroup of the theropod dinosaurs evolved into birds. Paleontologists continue to find and study dinosaur bones and other fossils. They're learning new things all the time, taking us back to the age when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And joining me now is paleontologist David Varricchio to answer your questions. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to go to your questions.
My name is Cagney. I go to Shadow Hills in Boise, and my question is, how did the dinosaurs go extinct?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's if you ask 10 different paleontologists, they'll give you 10 different reasons as to why dinosaurs went extinct. So it's still a big question. I don't know if I can give you a good answer. We know some things about the time when dinosaurs go extinct. That is, there's major changes in the climate, and a lot of that's brought about by lots of volcanic eruptions, which alters the atmosphere and changes temperatures. And then there's certainly really good evidence that at one point an asteroid hits the Earth, and that also affects climate, but on a very short scale. So kind of those two things combine to probably bring about the demise of dinosaurs.
My name is Devin, and I go to Maranatha Christian School, and my question is, how did the dinosaurs' bones turn into fossils?
So your bones, my bones, your bones, actually have a mineral, a crystal component to them. So in some ways, they're kind of like rocks to begin with, although the other parts of our bones are filled with blood and nerve tissue and other sort of soft, gooey stuff. So when a dinosaur dies, that soft material gets eaten by bacteria and rots and disappears. And then through time, water underground percolates through the rock and deposits other minerals, other crystals that grow inside those spaces within the bone. So a dinosaur bone today consists in some ways, part of it is still the crystals, the minerals that were part of that dinosaur 75 or 100 million years ago. And in all those spots where we had soft tissue, they've been filled in usually by other minerals that have kind of replaced the soft tissue.
Hi, my name is John. I go to St. Mary's Elementary School in Moscow. My question is, how long did dinosaurs live?
That's a good question because people have been trying to figure out the age of dinosaurs and how long they lived, because that would give us a nice estimate about dinosaurs' lives, how they lived out their life. We can get at that in part by looking at thin sections of their bones, because their bones record growth lines, kind of like tree growth rings. So sometimes you can look at tree rings and count how old a tree is. In the same way, you can kind of look at dinosaur bones and get an estimate of their age by looking at these growth lines. So it looks like big dinosaurs lived 10, 20, maybe even 50 years. So kind of comparable to a lot of big animals today.
Ben from Clearwater Valley Elementary in Kuski asks, are dinosaurs related to birds or reptiles?
Yes, dinosaurs you can think of dinosaurs and birds as really belong to the reptile group. So we typically think of reptiles as turtles, lizards, snakes, and crocodiles. But really, as scientists think of reptiles, reptiles includes all those groups, but also includes dinosaurs and birds and some other things. So when scientists think about reptiles, we include dinosaurs and birds within them. And then when scientists think about dinosaurs, we actually include birds within dinosaurs. So we can say that birds are dinosaurs and that birds and dinosaurs are reptiles.
My name is Danny and I go to Lena Elementary in Moscow. My question is, how many species of dinosaurs are there?
So we can only kind of guess at how many species there were. When we look at the rocks that dinosaurs are found in, we probably only see a small sample of all the dinosaurs that once lived. So far, scientists have named about 600 species, but some scientists have estimated that there may have been 2,000, 3,000 dinosaurs through the whole Mesozoic era.
My name's Nicole, and I go to Pine Forest Middle School, North Carolina, and my question is, why did the small mammals survive but not the dinosaurs?
That's a really good question, and people have investigated that to try to figure that out as to why the small animals survive. Some people think that small animals may have been able to find shelter, so if an asteroid hit the Earth and chaos is happening everywhere, that little animals might have been able to crawl into a burrow and rest through that sort of rough period of time. Other small animals, like in ponds, like turtles and frogs, they could swim down to the bottom of the pond and hide in the mud and stay there for a couple months and then come back out when things were better. The other aspect, though, about being big is that if you're big, you require lots of food, lots of area, lots of space, whereas small animals can get by on very little, so there's sort of a better chance if you're small that you'll survive as well. So maybe those two things. Little animals can find shelter more easily, and also they require less food.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex had the most powerful bite of any land animal ever. Scientists think a T-Rex bite had the same force as an elephant sitting on the ground.
Hello, my name is Parker, and I go to Highlands Elementary School, and my question is, what era and what kind of dinosaurs lived in Idaho?
There are a few dinosaurs known from Idaho. We have rocks from about 100 million years ago, so that's the Cretaceous period, and they're all located in eastern Idaho. And the dinosaurs that have been found include Oryctodromeus, which is a small plant-eating dinosaur, not very big, about the size of your typical dog, like a Labrador retriever, something like that. So not a really big dinosaur. Ate plants. It may have burrowed in the ground, made a little den for its young. There are some teeth for some carnivorous dinosaurs, maybe some raptors like Deinonychus-like animals. There may be a big iguanodon, kind of a big duckbill type animal as well. And we have eggs. We have a couple eggs from maybe a big, giant oviraptor. That would be really exciting. We have the eggs, but we haven't really found any bones of that animal yet.
Hi, my name is Jack, and I go to McDonald Elementary in Moscow, and my question is, how many bones are there in a velociraptor?
Velociraptor and most dinosaurs had a lot of bones, probably in the neighborhood of about 250 bones. So that's quite a bit.
Ben from Horizon Elementary asks, which dinosaurs had feathers?
It's only been a few years that we found feathers on dinosaurs. So far, the most common dinosaurs to have feathers are some of the meat-eating dinosaurs, particularly the smaller meat-eating dinosaurs. Those are the ones that are closely related to birds. But recently, people have also found some feathers on some tyrannosaur relatives, and so we can say that certainly many of the carnivorous dinosaurs had feathers. There's also been a couple interesting finds of some of the plant-eating dinosaurs, some of the ornithischians, not really feathers, but interesting, maybe long scales that sort of fit somewhere between a feather and a scale. So it might be that many dinosaurs had interesting scales and or feathers.
My name is Kendall. I go to Camelot Elementary in Lewiston, and my question is, how many teeth did a T-Rex have?
Let me do some quick math. That they had 13, 25. They had about 58, 60 teeth in their jaws at one time. They'd also have other teeth, so for each tooth that you could see in their jaws, they would have other teeth growing in to replace those teeth. But so in their smile, they'd have 60 teeth, but they'd also have about 60 or maybe about 120 teeth that you couldn't see prepared to replace the teeth that they were using.
My name is Kendall, and I go to Answer Charter School. My question is, why do you find different dinosaurs buried on top of each other?
So to get a dinosaur preserved in the rocks, back when dinosaurs lived, we have to have sediment being deposited. So rivers and lakes, the moving water carries sediment. And so if you have a dead dinosaur, it carries that sediment on top of the dinosaur and eventually could settle on top of that, and we bury that dinosaur. So through time, we get different rock layers, and the dinosaurs of different time periods get buried within those rock layers. So as you move up through the rocks, you get into younger and younger rocks. And so through that time, you might have had different dinosaurs living in different environments, or maybe different dinosaurs have evolved, or maybe they've moved in from some other place. So through the rock layers, you get different types of dinosaurs.
Hi, my name is Annika. I go to Whitman Elementary in Lewiston, and my question is, what colors were dinosaurs?
We don't have too much information on dinosaur colors. And for a while, people would say that scientists would never know what the color of dinosaurs were. But very recently, people have found indication of color in some feathers associated with dinosaurs. So there are a couple dinosaurs where people have been able to determine what colors they were. Some of them were kind of browns and grays, and some of them were kind of a rusty color. But probably dinosaurs had a wide variety of colors. You can think of dinosaurs' relatives today, lizards and reptiles and birds, have all sorts of colors in their feathers and their scales. So likely that was a capability that dinosaurs had too. So probably there's a lot of colors out there that dinosaurs were.
My name is Madeline, and I go to Middleton Heights. My question is, how come the dinosaurs have such weird names that are so hard to say?
Scientists have agreed to use Latin or Latinized words to name animals and plants. So they're basically the scientific names that we give to all things, plants and animals. So it's up to paleontologists to choose whether it's a good name or a more complex name or a simple name. So all the names of dinosaurs come from Latin roots or Greek roots or sometimes other languages, and then we sort of put them together into combinations that hopefully mean something.
Lisa from Boise asks, what does a dinosaur egg look like?
It's kind of interesting about dinosaur eggs in that they come in more shapes and sizes than you find among their living relatives. So we have really big round eggs, kind of the size of a volleyball or a soccer ball. And then we have some very small ones. We have some that are very long and skinny, that might be more than a foot and a half long, and not very wide. And then the surfaces of dinosaur eggs are interesting. Some are smooth, like you'd see in a chicken egg, but then some have little bumps, almost like goose bumps, or little ridges, and some have ridges and valleys. So their surfaces are very different too. So there's actually a really wide variety of dinosaur egg sizes and shapes and different surface textures. So that's kind of an interesting subject for dinosaur researchers to study, because it kind of suggests that they're doing a variety of things with their eggs, more than, say, what birds do or modern reptiles do. So we're in the main quarry where we've worked the last 3 summers, and in the past weeks we've exposed some larger bones of a duckbill dinosaur, and they've been covered with plaster initially, and now we're kind of digging around them. We'll have to cover them more with plaster and burlap in order to get them out of the ground.
So how do you begin the process?
We basically sort of flatten the quarry out and kind of just go sort of peel off layers of the rocks and work our way down until we encounter something. In order to protect the bones, we cover them with the white plaster jackets. And then we want to take the bones out as one piece. So, due to fossilization and the geologic processes, the bones are all broken up. So we want to enwrap them completely in plaster jackets. So we kind of have to trench around them to get a full circle around the bones, and then we can kind of wrap them completely. And then once that's done, then we can remove them from the ground.
I'm not sniping.
Try to bring that one around the nose, Eric. Yeah. This area was an area that had lots of small eggshell, so we were kind of just exploring around that. And in doing so, we found 2 things. One, we found a couple eggs, small eggs. Maybe they're lizard eggs, maybe they're bird eggs, something like that. And then we also found a lizard skeleton. So lizards and mammals also lived at the time of dinosaurs. We don't often think about them, but there are lots of small animals that might be familiar to us today that were around when dinosaurs were around.
Could you describe what you're showing?
So it's basically the remnants of a dinosaur egg clutch. Lots of broken eggshell, and then some parts of eggs. The rock is different here. Kind of there's this oval-shaped structure where the rocks have changed, and that might reflect the dinosaurs nesting. Maybe they brought vegetation in or dug in the soil, and that kind of changed the chemistry of the rock, so it's preserved differently. And then in here we do find partial eggs. This is one of the better eggs. So that's the part of an egg there. So that's one end here, and then the whole egg would be about this long, so about yay big. They're kind of neat because they have a bumpy surface, kind of different from modern reptiles and modern birds. They have kind of a goose-bumped texture to them.
What kind of dinosaur are you finding here? What's the basic, what you're looking for?
We find lots of duckbill dinosaurs, or hadrosaurs, so we found bones of them, and then we found 2 egg types, one of a dinosaur called Troodon, a small meat-eating dinosaur, kind of close to the ancestry of birds. And then we found another type of egg, a bumpy egg, that we don't really know who it belongs to. So it's some kind of, probably some small carnivorous dinosaur, but we're not really sure. It's a little bone, I guess. I'd put some glue on it. Ooh, it's a Troodon tooth.
That's what I thought.
Cool. It's a very small Troodon tooth.
So to understand dinosaurs, you also have to understand the environment they lived in and the things that lived around them?
Yeah, that gives us more of a complete picture.
Why did you want to become a paleontologist?
I like the idea of traveling in time, being able to go back 75 million years to the time of the dinosaurs and thinking about how dinosaurs lived and what their environment was like. But I also like it because there's physical things, there's bones and rocks that you can dig up and hold and look at. So there's also, so it kind of combines a physical aspect, you know, real hard objects, and also kind of your imagination as well to kind of put them into the time of 75 million years ago.
You're someone who's interested in becoming a paleontologist. What should you do?
Study hard. It takes a little bit of knowing biology, so knowing something about animals, but also having appreciation about geology, the rocks, and how the Earth is formed and how the rock layers are formed.
All right, thanks for the tour. Now let's get back to your questions.
Hi, my name is Nicola. I go to school in Preston's Elementary, Arlington, Virginia. And my question is, do all dinosaurs have 3 toes?
Some dinosaurs had 4 toes, some dinosaurs had 5 toes, and some dinosaurs had 3 toes. Some dinosaurs even ran only on 2 toes and had one of their toes modified as a big retractable claw, but really only ran on 2. So there's a variety among dinosaurs about the numbers of toes they had.
Sean from Gilbert's, Illinois asks, what was the biggest and smallest dinosaur?
The biggest dinosaurs were the sauropod dinosaurs. Those are the 4-legged ones with long necks and long tails. So that includes things like Seismosaurus from New Mexico, Argentinosaurus from South America. Some of those were very big, you know, maybe 100 feet long and many tons, so the size of several elephants all put together. And then the smallest dinosaurs back in the Mesozoic era were things like Microraptor, which were about the size of a magpie, if you've ever seen a magpie fly about around your house. So not much bigger than a sort of your average bird.
My name is Tristan, and I go to Centennial Elementary in Lewiston, and my question is, why were dinosaurs bigger than animals now?
That's a tricky question. There were lots of small dinosaurs, but you're right in thinking that there were a lot of big dinosaurs, and that in any one spot you could always find dinosaurs that were bigger than most of the animals that were around today. Some people actually think that it's due to the dinosaurs laying eggs, and that it was just sort of easier to produce lots of eggs and have the opportunity for some of those young to survive, as opposed to, say, an elephant that really only has one offspring every few years. So it takes about 2 years for a baby elephant to grow inside its mom. So they have to kind of commit to that one offspring because of that internal development. But since dinosaurs had eggs, that might have given them more flexibility. So maybe in bad years, they'd lose all their eggs, but in good years, they could lay lots of eggs and those young would survive. So some people think that egg laying was the key to dinosaurs being so big.
Hi, my name's Courtney, and I go to St. Mary's Elementary School in Moscow. And my question is, are there still dinosaurs on the planet?
It's a good question. So you can think of birds as dinosaurs. They evolved from meat-eating dinosaurs back in the late Jurassic period, and there were birds around with what we typically think of dinosaurs for about 85 million years, and then our typical dinosaurs went extinct and birds survived. So we have a diversity of birds today, and if you looked at their skeletons, actually you'd get a really good idea of what a dinosaur back in the Cretaceous or the Jurassic might have looked like.
Hi, my name is Evan, and I go to Spalding Elementary in Meridian. My question is, do T-Rexes lay eggs?
So far, we have never discovered eggs for a T-Rex, but all the dinosaurs that T-Rex is related to, we found eggs for. So we would guess that T-Rex did lay eggs. I'd like to find those eggs, actually. That'd be really cool.
Hi, my name is Corbin, and I am 6 years old, and I go to Siena Elementary, and this is what I have to say. Why do dinosaurs have teeth when they're born?
Dinosaurs did have teeth when they were born, and we know that because we found baby dinosaurs inside the eggs. And what's kind of interesting is that some of them actually have wear on their teeth even as embryos, so even as babies inside the egg. And it looks like those teeth had already erupted, they had already grown up, and that the baby was kind of preparing them for when it hatched out of the egg so it could go feed. Dinosaurs, unlike mammals, they didn't drink milk, so they had to chew food, whether it was plants or meat, once they were born. So that's why they have teeth when they hatch out.
Hi, my name is Destiny. I go to Whitman Elementary in Lewiston, and my question is, can dinosaurs live in our atmosphere today?
Yeah, the Mesozoic era had a pretty similar atmosphere to today. So the amount of oxygen and other gases was pretty similar. Although sometimes people think that there was more oxygen back then than there is today. There's still a lot of debate about that, whether that's true or not.
Hi, my name is Coral, and I go to Highlands Elementary. And my question is, if you could ride a dinosaur, what dinosaur would you ride, and why?
If I could ride a dinosaur, I think I'd ride a Triceratops, just because I like the idea of having that really big frill and the big horns out in front of me. I think that'd be kind of cool. I think I could feel comfortable riding through traffic on a Triceratops and no one would bug me.
Hi, my name is Austin, and I go to Riverside Elementary, and I was wondering how the cockroaches survived the extinction of dinosaurs.
Lots of animals make it through when dinosaurs go extinct and actually survive after the dinosaurs. So mammals, the furry animals, birds survive, there's fish and lots of things. So it's kind of surprising why dinosaurs went extinct. But advantages to some of these small animals is that they require less food to survive, and they also can find shelter. They can burrow down or hide behind things when the climate and conditions are really bad.
I'm sorry we've run out of time. David, thank you for having us here.
Thanks for coming. It's been great to have you guys.
And you can learn more about dinosaurs and lots of other scientific topics at the D4K website. We'll also answer more questions about dinosaurs on the D4K web only. And every week, check out my science blog for the latest science news for kids. You find all of that at idahoptv.org/D4K. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on D4K. Hey, do you have a science question? Yeah! Do you want to win some prizes? Yeah! When you send us a question to use on D4K, you and your class are eligible to win DVDs and other prizes. Last month's prize winner was Hannah from Mrs. Hudson's class at Dalton Elementary in Dalton Gardens. If you want to submit a question, check out the D4K website for this season's topics and send it in. You can send it as an email or as a video question, recorded on your webcam or cell phone. And if you're an educator, we'll even lend you a camera. Find out all the details on how to send in your questions and how to win on the D4K website. That's idahoptv.org/D4K. D4K, the place for science.
Presentation of D4K on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
If you want to learn more about this topic or watch our videos, check out the D4K website at idahoptv.org/D4K.